Hi, I'm Anka from MedRise Studio, and this is the place to be to hear about the latest Web3 trends in healthcare. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome an incredibly accomplished guest, Veronica Kirin. Veronica's career as an anthropologist, writer, entrepreneur has not only earned her multiple awards, but also a coveted spot on the Forbes Next 1000 list. Her insights have captivated audiences around the world, including at 2 TEDx talks. Beyond her remarkable personal achievements, Veronica is the founder of Asterisk DAO, an initiative dedicated to transforming the landscape of women's non-reproductive health through research and funding. Veronica, it is an absolute honor to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here. I love that you're doing this.
Your journey encompasses such a broad spectrum of different achievements. You had multiple startups. You also successfully exited one. You had so many different projects, did so many different things. What inspired you to explore the Web3 space specifically and also choose this DAO model for an innovative project in women's health?
I'm one of those people that just can't focus in on exactly one thing at a time. I have to have multiple things going. It helps me to grow as a person. And also, I tend to see that my projects dovetail really well. And so they'll build each other, which is really amazing. So actually, I'm the founder of a magazine right now that's publishing on women's health as well, a literary magazine. So I have these kind of like the art side and then the practical side of women's health that we're working on. I chose a DAO as the structure because when you say you want to address a problem that involves chronic health conditions, you tend to invite people who have dealt with chronic health conditions. And so what I love about a DAO is that it allows people to come in and work at their best when they have it. And then if they need to step out, it's not like the end of their career. Like so often we hear how, women take maternity leave and then all of a sudden they can't get a job anymore. That doesn't happen within a DAO, or at least it shouldn't. Not within our DAO, it doesn't. So we have a couple of PhD students. They're finishing up their work mid-May. So they said, halfway through April through mid-May, we really just can't be on. And we say, that's fine. That sounds good. Your education is super important. My co-founder is currently in Kenya, so she's not going to be on the call this week, So we really love that model. I think it's extremely supportive to the mission of Asterisk towards changing what the paradigm looks like for women's non-reproductive health. And Web3 in general is attractive because there are these problems, as you well know, that are endemic to the systems we have today. Several of those problems have been tried to be fixed through conventional models and just fail. And so I believe that Web3 provides the opportunity to get around some of the endemic problems in order to actually hone in on the root and attack it politely and nicely, but maybe not so politely, actually, in order to really bring about real change.
And Asterisk DAO is a project that you launched how long ago?
We had our official launch in August. It's been in my brain for about a year before that.
Okay, and we're recording in April of 2024. So it's a pretty recent project. Can you walk us through what the first months looked like? What are some of the critical steps that you had to take? What were the first considerations? How do you engage with the first community members and so on?
Yeah, I'm really lucky that I have an amazing advisor who has kind of just like helped me with all my questions because this is my first Web3 venture. And so those first months, like that chunk of time that happened before Asterisk really launched was churning over idea and idea and idea in order to get to a place that felt like, okay, this is something that I can actually talk about publicly and invite people into. And then from there, the launch was really a critical moment for us because we had people who had been talking to me at either Berlin Blockchain Week or other events and had heard like, I have this idea and I'm working on it, but it's not like publicly available yet. It's not ready yet. And so when I had the launch party, which was over Zoom, several of those key players came and then immediately said, yes, I want to be in those weekly calls. I want to help shape and grow this organization. And so I can see that as this key moment of like, yes, I seeded a little bit in their minds the idea, but that launch and what I was able to present there was one of the most critical moments for Asterisk. And since then, it's been weekly calls and working to really research and have discussions with key players in the industry in order to finalize what a good business plan looks like in this space. So now we're just finishing up our white paper. And so hopefully we can go from incubation now into public action.
So you already have your first early adopters, your first members of the community?
Yeah, we have 15 people who are like rotating, showing up at the weekly meetings. And then we have a core team of about 5 that are, putting their blood, sweat, and tears into it. And so that's what the team looks like. Our next stage is to really kind of blow out of the water the public invitation. Yeah.
Well, you heard her. If you want to join Asterisk DAO, you have to reach out to Veronica. You're recruiting members, right?
Yep, we are. And the white paper is slated to launch at Block Split at the end of May. So like this is the moment. You can get in early if you want to.
That's perfect. You heard her. Asterisk DAO mission is also to fund projects in women's non-reproductive health, which is really interesting because there are so many different projects in women's reproductive health. So it's nice to see another aspect of women's health being funded. And what type of initiatives are you looking to fund, and how do you want to select the projects that you'll be funding?
Yeah, so funding is actually our like third level of development. We're not going to be funding anything in the near term. Eventually, we want to be focusing in on femtech startups that are in the non-reproductive space because 80% of VC funding is going towards reproductive health. That's awesome. We need it. But it's time for us to champion the rest of our bodies. Women being twice as likely to die of a heart attack as a man because we're using incorrect symptoms, women going psychotic because they're taking too large of a dose of Ambien because they weren't involved in the clinical trials. Things like this are just absolutely ridiculous. And it's like, we can go through the numbers. We can show how profitable it would be to be funding non-reproductive health from women across the board, from in early trials all the way through products. But it shouldn't be about that. It should just be about the quality of life of 51% of the world's population. And so, we have an enormous amount of work to do because we're talking about like the entire rest of the female body. But I don't know. You can tell I'm full of gumption. I'm here for it.
Well, that's interesting because we need this type of people, and we need people to champion women's health outside of the reproductive spectrum. And for the longest time, women's health has been about the reproductive system because potentially that is what differentiates us from men. But there are so many other things that differentiate us from men that are not linked to our reproductive system. I'm not going to say that to you because you're already convinced, but to our audience, there are so many things outside of that. And we worked on a podcast a couple of years ago where we were looking at when medicine discovered women's health. And we kind of reached the conclusion that it never did, really. We're still in the discovery phase. There are still so many things that modern medicine doesn't know about women's health.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at that history, you can see that Western medicine basically started by kicking all the women out. And so we lost generations. And I mean, like hundreds of generations of knowledge about women's bodies and women's health. And eventually we know, women were kicked out even of the birthing rooms. And so then we lost a lot of knowledge about how how the birth process should and ought to be. And then we put women on their backs. And so they're giving birth uphill. And then it's even worse for the body. And then we're just like throwing women into cesarean sections, even though most of those cases shouldn't even be a surgery. And so, yeah, there's like this loss of legacy knowledge. And it feels, I know to you and me, like a no duh, like, of course we're different, right? Like we know that hormones select different genes and different representations within the body, which we are seeing in our trans brothers and sisters, which is really interesting. You can see that gene expression changing and their body shifting, which means there could be a whole nother asterisk just for that, like just for understanding this area of medicine that is only emerging because we just didn't have the technology before. So yeah, I can go on because there's like so many gaps, and it's like, what are we doing? Like, why is this the thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. And another thing that's within the scope of Asterisk DAO is the fact that you want to bridge all the gaps that we have in health data regarding women. Can you go more into details about that specific aspect of your work?
Yeah. So the philosophy that you've been touching on within medicine is that it's called bikini medicine, which I just like hate even the term, let alone what it means, because it sounds belittling, and it is. So the idea that women are only different where bikini covers, that's a 500-year-old concept that came with the start of medicine. And so if you extrapolate that further, even today, if you go to clinicaltrials.gov, dear listeners, pick a study, any study, and you will see most of the time it says women excluded from study. Full stop. And the reason being, they have to cite a reason. The reason being, women's bodies are too complex, which means that we still are missing, just like with Ambien, with ADHD medication, which, by the way, doesn't exactly work in the female body during her luteal phase, during the second half of the phase of the cycle. So, of course, you would want to exclude women's bodies from those studies, because otherwise your drug will show to be less effective. So, yeah, we have up until now, like still in 2024, massive gaps in understanding of women's health. We're going to market with building data lakes for diseases that specifically bias against women. Things like OCD, fibromyalgia, autoimmune disorders. These are gender agnostic technically, and yet they bias heavily towards women. But the science isn't there. The information isn't there. So when you go to medication, modalities, therapeutics, there's no sense of, okay, how is a female body going to be affected or affect the success of what we are trying to do?
So are you trying to bring together different databases, or are you launching your own cohort, or how are you planning to do that?
Yeah, we're going to be launching our own data lakes through self-reporting of specific diseases in order to then take that data to researchers who are certainly starved for data.
Wow, that's really nice. And it makes me think of this project that we have in France where it's focused on women who have cancer, and they send, I think it's weekly or monthly surveys to collect data about these patients. And what's really interesting is that once you participate in a survey, then the researcher who uses your data comes back to you with the results of the research. So you feel really empowered to know what happened with my data and how am I contributing to research. So I think that would make a lot of sense in women's non-reproductive health as well.
Yeah, I've heard of initiatives like that, and it's really a great way to like bridge that gap between participating within medicine and just being kind of like hit by it, subjected to. And being a DAO, what it ultimately means is that as people participate, of course, they will have a token, a stake within the organization, ultimately leading to women for the first time being able to vote on the future therapeutics that will affect their own healthcare. So, like, literally, first time on the planet, women can vote on their healthcare.
It's actually,
it's like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But like,
it's actually crazy,
why
that
haven't we done
sentence.
this before? Right. And that's why I'm so dedicated to Web3, because it enables this type of thing for the first time.
Well, thank you so much, Veronica. I wish you the best of luck in developing Asterisk DAO. And if the community wants to get involved in this project, you can reach out to Veronica or just look up the website, Asterisk DAO. Thank you so much for your insights, for this very eye-opening conversation. I sure hope so. It was great having you on the show. Thank you.